Hey everyone, in this lesson we are going to talk about error handling. Error handling is extremely important in production apps. If there is a problem in your app and you do not handle it in a way that the user knows what is happening or how to recover from it, you're going to get bad reviews and no one is going to want to use your app. And I think this is something that is neglected a lot in tutorials since it's time consuming. So most often you will see something kind of just like we have here in our login VC. If they even check for errors, it'll just be to check for and then debug print it. Or worse, they'll just be a to-do saying to come back later and handle it. Now, I understand the reasoning for this in tutorials. Students don't want to spend a ton of time just writing error handling code. But since it is so important, we are going to spend a little time learning about error handling and specifically the Firebase auth errors. So let's jump right in. So I am here in the login VC file. And let's take a look at our sign-in method. We have in our completion and our closure, we have a user and an error. And both of these are optional. So we're doing a check here to see if there is an error, then currently we are just printing it out. Now that's only useful to us, the developers. The user is not going to see anything. So for instance, if we run this and I, as a user, come over here to log in, and I put in an email and I forget the @ for instance, and I say johnnygmail.com and I put in my password 123123 and I click on login, all I'm going to see is that it tried to do something and then stopped. And as a user, that's going to be frustrating, especially if it's something that's not so obvious as missing the @. So let's do better. First, let's take a look at this error that we are printing out here. And you can see that information here in the console. And it says here error, and then we have a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it is kind of user friendly, other bits of it are not. We have something here called the domain, and we see that it is FireAuth error domain. We have a code 17008. Remember this number, this is going to be important. We'll take a look at this later. Then we have a message here. The email address is badly formatted. And that's pretty user-friendly. That might be something that we could display to the user. And then we have here a dictionary called user info. And inside of it, we have something called an NS localized description. And again, we see the same message. The email address is badly formatted. So let's take a look and see if we can print out this message instead. So here under debug print, we can say error dot, and then we can say localized description. And if we run that again, and again, try to log in with a badly formed email, I'm just gonna put in some gibberish and say login. Now we see printed out, the email address is badly formatted. I think that's something that we could definitely display to our user. So let's create a function that will present an alert to the user displaying that localized description. Now we have quite a few view controllers that are using Firebase authentication, login VC, register VC, even our home VC uses Firebase authentication. So I'm thinking let's go ahead and create an extension for our UI view controller that has this function. That way we can call this function from any of our view controllers. So I'm going to say extension UI view controller, and it's not auto-completing because we need to import UI kit here. And that should work now, UI view controller, there we go. And we're going to create a function, and I'm gonna call this handle FireAuth error. Okay, so I'm gonna say func handle FireAuth error. And this is going to be specific to Firebase authentication errors, but the principle is the same. You could use it for other types of errors as well. And we're going to pass into it an error. And then here inside, let's go ahead and write out the code to present an alert to the user. I'm not sure if we have gone over this code before. So this is just your standard iOS alert, and it's pretty easy to code up. So I'm going to say let alert equal, and we use the UI alert controller class. It says here an object that displays an alert message to the user, and we initialize it with a title, message, and a preferred style. So for the title, I'm just going to say error. For the message, we're going to use the error that we passed into this function. I'm going to say error dot localized description. And for the preferred style, you have two options here. You have an action sheet and an alert. The action sheet is that sheet that kind of slides up from the bottom, and you'll usually have some options there. The alert is the most common one that just kind of pops up right in the middle of your view. So we're going to go with alert. Okay, so we have our alert. Now we need to add an action to it. Okay, so I'm going to say let OK action equal, and then for this we use a UI alert action, and you can see down here it says an action that can be taken when the user taps a button in an alert. So we're just going to make this an OK button that they can click to dismiss the alert. We initialize it with a title, and we'll just put in OK. Then for the style, you have a number of styles here: cancel, default, destructive. I'm just going to go with default. And then here you have a closure, an optional closure, if you wanted to do something after you click on the button. Okay, we don't need it to do anything after we click on the button, so we're just going to say nil. Then we have to add our action to our alert. So we say alert.add action and say OK action. And then finally we can say present. And the view controller that we want to present is alert. Animated is true and completion is nil. There we go, looks good. So let's go ahead and call this from our login VC. Remember that since this is an extension of our UI view controller, this is a function that we can call from any view controller. So coming back to our login VC, we're still going to print this out in our console, but here we can also say self.handle fire auth error, and we can pass in the error right here that we are getting. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and test that out. All right, so here we are. Let's click on login, put in some gibberish for our email. We'll say 123123. And now when I click on login, we should get an alert giving us our message. So I'm gonna say login, and oh, there we go. Error, the email address is badly formed. Awesome. All right, let's try get a different error. So I'll say johnny@test.com, and I'll say 123, and we'll say login. And we'll see here that it says the password is invalid or the user does not have a password. All right, awesome. So now you can see how, depending on what Firebase is passing back as the error, we get presented different messages. And this will work pretty well. The only thing is, unless you go investigate all the potential errors and their localized descriptions, you don't know exactly what the error message is going to say. Sometimes they might be a little too technical, sometimes they seem a little stiff and businessy, and sometimes you might just want it to say something completely different. So now I'm going to show you how you can customize the response we are getting for these errors. All right, so let's go back into our extensions file, and we are going to modify this function a little bit. And what we are going to do is we are going to initialize a class called authErrorCode, and it's actually an enum. So let's say if let error code is equal to auth error, and I need to import Firebase here so that we have access to that class. Import Firebase. Here we go. So I'm going to say auth error code. Okay. You can see here that says error codes used by Firebase auth. And we are going to initialize this with a raw value. It says creates a new instance with the specified raw value. And this, we are going to say error._code, okay? So remember that number that I said to remember when we were looking at the login vc.swift. So if we run this again, and if I again do a bad email and say login, and we come here and we take a look here, we see code 17008, okay? And that is this right here, this error._code. And if we come into here, our auth error code, and if you command click and say jump to definition, what you'll see here is the definition of the enumerator type. All right, so this is Objective C, okay? So you might see that this is a little bit different from the Swift that you are used to seeing, a little bit uglier in my humble opinion. But what we have here is all of the error codes used by Firebase auth. We have the name of the case and the int value. And so remember here we have code 1708. And if we scroll down here a little bit, we'll see, lo and behold, 1708, FireAuth error code invalid email. So this indicates the email is invalid. So that's pretty cool. So what we are going to do here is first we're going to just take this, cut it, and paste it right in here. And I showed you all of these enums because what we're going to do is we're going to do a switch statement, and we are going to take case by case, whichever ones we want to, and we're going to create a new custom error message, okay? So the way that we do that is we're going to create an extension now on this class, auth error code. So we're going to say extension auth error code, and we are going to create a variable called error message, and it's going to be of type string. Okay, so this is a new property of the class auth error code that we are creating. And what we are going to do is, since we're initializing it with this right here with this error code, what we're going to do is we are going to switch on the cases that we want to check and provide as a string as this error message, our own message. Now I am including this file in the resources, so don't feel like you have to code along to it all. I'm going to be typing quite a bit, so I'm actually going to kind of speed through, fast forward a little bit, and then we'll discuss afterwards. So if you want, you can just download the resource and drop it, or copy the contents into your own extensions file. But I'm going to start out typing out some of the cases, and then I'll go into the fast forward. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say switch, and we are switching on self. We're switching on the auth error code enum. Okay, so we're going to say switch self, and we're going to say case dot, and then here you see all of those options for the auth error code enums. So you could do just some of them, you could do all of them, whatever you want. I'm going to do several here just to cover some bases. I'm going to say email already in use. That's one, that's a pretty common one. So I'm going to say case.email already in use, colon, and then we're going to return a message. I'll say the email is already in use with another account. Pick another email. All right, so now we have created ourselves a new error message for this auth error code type. And then you'll see here that switch must be exhaustive. So you can click on this and add missing cases, in which case it will add all of them. We don't, I'm not going to go through and do all of them. So instead what I'm going to do is add a default case here and return a kind of a generic, sorry, something went wrong. All right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and paste in the other cases that I have here in my alpha project. And you can see that we are just adding in more cases, user not found, disabled, invalid email, etc., and providing our own error messages. So once we have that, what we can do is, instead of displaying the localized description, what we can do is display error code dot error message, which is this variable that we created right here. So now, instead of saying the email address is badly formatted, When we run this and do the same thing again, we should see what we have here for invalid email. Please enter a valid email. All right, so I'm going to say login, type in a bad email, password, and log in. And indeed, we see our message, please enter a valid email. So that is pretty stinking cool, I think. So let's go ahead and add in our error handling in our other locations that we might need to. So here in register VC, I'm going to do a search for debug print. Looks like we only have one here, so I'm going to say self.handle fire auth error, and we'll pass in the error. And then here in home VC, we also have an opportunity to use it. So I'm going to say self.handle fire auth error, and again, pass in the error. So now, everywhere in our project that we are using it, oh, we have one more right here. And right here. Everywhere that we are using Firebase authentication, if there is an error, we will now be displaying to our user a more useful message so that they can know what they need to do. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you all in the next one.